Language teachers understand that there's no quick fix that they can deploy to help students quickly become fluent in their target language. Hi, this is Sheila Belda, and today I'm going to talk about the 10 best language teaching strategies. There are some common evidence-based teaching approaches which can help make a difference. This short video summarizes 10 of the most notable approaches to language teaching. I hope that this will help support us as language educators looking for some inspiration to improve our teaching practice. It's worth noting that none of these approaches should be considered the best since every classroom, educator, and student is different. The advice is rather that we as educators should try them out, tailoring them to their specific context and reviewing the impact that they have. So, let's start now with the first strategy. First, we have communicative language teaching or the CLT. This approach is probably now the most popular teaching model for English language teaching globally, in part because it aims to put students in a variety of real-life situations so that they can learn how to use their language skills to communicate in the real world. Educators, therefore, tend to focus on fluency of communication rather than accuracy, and lessons are more hands-on than theoretical. Interactive and relevant classroom activities characterize this approach along with the use of authentic source materials. Teachers are encouraged to provide the students with as much opportunity to give and receive meaningful communication as possible. The use of personal experience is also common in CLT classrooms. Second is task-based language teaching or the TBLT. The focus of TBLT technique or teaching is solely on the completion of a detailed task which interests and engages the learners. Learners use the language skills that they already have to complete the task and work through the three distinct phases: a pre-task, the task itself, and the post-task. Students might, for example, be asked to deliver a presentation about an important environmental issue. In order to complete it, they will need to read, listen to source material, conduct internet research or research, as well as writing and delivering the presentation itself. Research suggests that students in TBLT classes are empowered and motivated because they own the language and can control the nature of task response. The third one is content and language integrated learning or the CLIL. The CLIL approach principally involves studying one subject, for example, biology, science, or history, and learning a language such as English, at the same time effectively integrating the two subjects. The language teaching is organized around the demands of the first subject rather than that of the target language. So, it's critically important to make sure that the integration is clear and that students are engaged. Having said that, The CLIL approach thus creates significant opportunities for cross-curricular working. It opens up language learning to a wider context and can be used to re-engage previously demotivated students. The fourth strategy is cooperative learning or cooperative language learning, or the CLL. Cooperative language learning, or CLL, forms part of a wider teaching approach known as collaborative or community learning, or the CL. The CLL seeks to make the maximum use of cooperative activities involving pairs and small groups of learners in the classroom. As such, it is a student-centered rather than a teacher-centered approach to language teaching. In the CLL classroom, all of the language learning activities are deliberately designed to maximize opportunities for social interactions. Students should accomplish tasks by interacting between themselves and talking or working together. The teacher's role is to act as a facilitator of and a participant in the learning task. Fifth is the direct method. In this language teaching approach, all teaching happens in the target language, forcing the learner to think and speak in that language. The learner does not use their native language in the classroom at all. So, as a result, students work out key grammar concepts or concepts by practicing the language and by building up their exposure to it. Standard classroom techniques for this approach include Q&As, conversation, reading aloud, writing, and student self-correction. The sixth is grammar translation. This is a very traditional teaching approach which prioritizes translation from the student's mother tongue into the target language and vice versa. To succeed in this approach, students need to memorize long lists of vocabulary and detailed grammar, formats, and rules. The approach favors accuracy over fluency and tends to favor the development of reading and writing skills instead of speaking skills. The downside of this approach is that it does not prepare students with spontaneous communication skills. Classroom activities, therefore, usually include grammar. The seventh one is audio-lingualism. This way of teaching was developed in response to some of the problems associated with grammar translation. As a result, classes are usually held in the target language, as this approach deliberately seeks to prioritize speaking and listening skills. Activities typically involve students repeating the teacher's words, either face-to-face or through headphones in a language lab, until they get the pronunciations and rhythm right. So good work is rewarded by the educator and mistakes are quickly corrected. The eighth strategy is total physical response. Total physical response, or TPR, is a way of language teaching in which the teacher presents language objects as instructions and the students have to do exactly what the teacher tells them. Students might therefore be asked to sit down, stand up, point to the clock, or walk to the front of the class. As students improve, such instructions can become more detailed, including additional elements for language comprehension, including adverbs, example, talk quickly, adjectives, example, put on your red jumper, and prepositions, example, stand in front of the teacher. The ninth is the silent way. It's perhaps hard to imagine a language classroom where the teacher doesn't actually say much. But that's the principle of or at the heart of this approach. As with CLL above, this approach deliberately shifts the focus from the teacher's teaching to the student's learning. Evidently, the silent way uses silence as a teaching tool. It encourages students to be more independent and to discover the target language for themselves. Teachers need to employ the widest possible range of gestures and facial expressions to communicate. Props might also be useful, and of course, make sure that you explain the whole process to the class first. And the last one, the natural approach. Adherents of this approach characterize it as recognizing and highlighting the difference between learning and acquiring a language. For them, learning a language requires structure, textbooks, resources, and memorizing grammar rules or vocabulary lists. Whereas acquiring a language only needs teachers to create an environment which immerses students in the repetition, correction, and recall of their target language. Primarily intended to be used with beginners learners or beginner learners, teachers emphasize interesting, comprehensible input and create a low anxiety situations. As such, lessons delivered using the natural approach focus on understanding messages in the foreign language and place little or no importance on error correction, drilling on, or unconscious learning of the grammar rules. So, that's all for now. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching.